Your triggers are your greatest treasures. And I know that might sound far out and hard to believe at first, but that's just the way it is. And this took me a while to see this and to actually understand what's going on from the level of the subconscious when I'm triggered. But eventually, what I started to see was I started to pick up on patterns. And this is one of the biggest elements of spiritual awakening: pattern recognition. When you have any kind of expansion of consciousness, and now you're operating from this heightened awareness, you start to see things that before you couldn't see. That's pattern recognition. You're seeing these different cycles and loops and tendencies and behaviors that seem to be connected to something much deeper than what it appears to be on the surface. So anyway, when we're triggered, what the trigger essentially is, especially the energy and the emotion that we're experiencing from the trigger, is an invitation to investigate something in the subconscious that has to do with a core belief about yourself. I like to call it an energetic identity embodiment. That's what the trigger is actually revealing, and a very important question to ask yourself when you're triggered by anything, but especially in relationships, is what does this mean about me? When you ask that question to yourself and you start to investigate what it means about you, there's so much clarity that starts to arise. But a lot of people view triggers as something that's negative, as something that is holding them back even more. But again, the triggers are just they're actually opportunities. They're actually, if we can view them this way, they're actually positive things that are invitations for us to actually experience an immense amount of freedom and wholeness and evolution on a very deep level. And so what happens is when we start to experience these different triggers, and like I said, we're paying attention to the energy, the emotion underneath the trigger, and we ask the question, what does this mean about me? What does this mean about yourself? What you find at that point is there is some kind of I am or I am not that has been conditioned into your subconscious that is simply like the projector. And I've talked about this before. I talked about it in a few videos ago, where I talked about the movie screen, the projector, the DVD or the reel inside the projector, and how that's how the subconscious works. The subconscious is the movie projector. It's projecting the core belief about yourself into the outer world, your perceived outer world, and you're not seeing life as it is. You're seeing life as you are. And then that's how these different things come up where we get triggered. And because it's a reflection of that core energetic identity embodiment, it's actually showing us where we're not free. And this is the starting point. If you want to experience any kind of liberation, especially on a deep level, on the subconscious level, you have to have awareness. You have to start seeing where you're not experiencing that freedom. You have to start to see what's in the way, what the clouds are that are blocking that inherent, innate freedom of your being. And that's why these triggers are acting as mirrors. They're just showing you. They're just showing you where you're not free. And so what I like to do when I'm triggered is the first thing is I pause. I just stop what I'm doing and I bring all my attention, all my energy, all my awareness into the energy or feeling or emotion I'm experiencing because of whatever just triggered me. And then what I do is, instead of running from that negative experience of whatever emotion or feeling it is in that moment, or even thought pattern, instead of running from it, instead of coping, instead of distracting myself or ignoring what I'm feeling, I do the opposite. I start to allow myself to feel that feeling. I give myself permission to sit with that emotion, because really what the emotion or feeling is it's just energy. And energy naturally wants to move. It wants to move through the body. It wants to flow. That's just what energy's doing. But it has to have space or permission to flow in and through us. And so when you're sitting with it, when you're just there, you're breathing with it, maybe you're speaking to the inner child. I like saying something as simple as, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. All of a sudden, the energy now starts to move through the body, and it's like a storm passes. And at first, I remember when I heard someone sharing about this the first time, I was like, there's no way this freaking works. There's no way I can just sit there and face my fears or sit with my shame or sit with my insecurity or anxiety, whatever. And just by sitting with it and giving it my presence and my awareness, that can cause it to just dissolve. Like, there's no way. If it was that simple, everybody would be doing it, yada, 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 you know? But then I tried it one time. I was like, what the hell? This is something that keeps coming up. This is a pattern. I'm noticing I'm always triggered when this happens, and it's been going on since I was a kid. And you know what? I feel stuck, and I feel like nothing's actually breaking this cycle. So I'm going to try something different. I'm going to do something that is really the complete opposite of what I've been conditioned to do when I am triggered. And that is to sit with it, to feel it, to face it, to embrace it. And I kid you not, when I did that for the first time, I was amazed at how fast that negative energy moved past me. And then it was just like a storm passing. As soon as the storm passed, there was this peace that surpasses all understanding, and this stillness and this clarity. Very, very similar to what happens when there's a literal storm outside in the sky and it's really cloudy, and it can be scary if there's lightning and thunder and all these different things, and you feel like this sense of whatever, and then it passes, and what's left? Well, it's the beautiful clear skies again. And it's clear, you feel that expansiveness again, you feel the high vibration again, maybe you get happy, and you feel all the positive emotions, right? And that's literally what happens within your being, within your mind, when you do what I just shared. And again, if this is like the first time you're hearing someone talk about this, or maybe you've been hearing people talk about this and you're like, I don't know, it just kind of sounds too easy or too simple, or maybe the mind's really fighting you on that. Again, I would say my invitation to you is to just give it a try. If nothing else is working, like, what do you have to lose? And you're ready to experience some kind of breakthrough, some kind of energy moving through your body so that you can start to be yourself again and not have to deal with these different clouds and waves of negativity and disempowerment and limitation. Like, what do you have to lose? That's just the way I see it. So it ends up passing a lot quicker than you think going into it. And then after that, that's the space where you're free. That's the space where you can now start to focus your energy on things that are in alignment with your natural high vibrational state. And for me, I talk about this a lot. What I like to do in this space, once the storm has passed from the trigger and I'm clear again and I can see, is I like to write some things down that I'm grateful for. Gratitude is so powerful. It's such a magnetic energy. And so I'll write some things down, or I'll just meditate on things that I'm grateful for and get into an elevated state. Then I'll take that and I'll go into an even more elevated state, and I'll start thinking about these different aspirations that I have, or I'll start viewing myself from this higher perspective, and I'll start to really embody and cultivate the energy of unconditional love and joy and bliss and authenticity. And now, 20, 30 minutes ago, what was once something that felt so negative and disempowering and like a setback has now been transformed into a moment of not just freedom and clarity, but now empowerment. Now I'm in this high vibrational frequency. Now I'm embodying gratitude and love and authenticity. So I'm more magnetic, and I'm learning and I'm growing and evolving and transforming. And that's what so much of this human experience is about. Not every day is a great day. Not every day is a perfect day. Like, we have these bad days and these okay days, and that's just like the law of rhythm, hermeticism. There's a flow. I often say that what we call a good or a bad day, good and bad days, that's just life breathing. That's just life breathing. There's this wave, there's this flow, there's the highs, there's the lows. But when you start to see what you really are beyond the waves, beyond the different flows, then you're free, you're detached from the high and from the low. And, a lot of the triggers are like the precursors sometimes to our bad days. But you can start to really transform these days and these situations if every time a trigger comes up, you're like, hey, wait a second. Thank you, God. Thank you, universe. You just gave me an opportunity to take something seemingly negative and something that would typically be like the beginning of a bad day or a bad week. And now I have the opportunity to transform the hell out of it and actually see things from a higher perspective and become transformed from the inside out. And now I can have a good day, or now I can do something that's creative or insightful, or something that's in alignment with my highest self. So that's how magical this stuff is. You are so much more powerful than you realize. We've been conditioned to believe that we are these separate, limited, finite beings, and that we're pretty much powerless, so we have to outsource our power. But that's just part of conditioning. That's part of the programming. And once you, again, going back to pattern recognition, once you see that, and once you see how it's been going on for like thousands of years in all these different systems or whatever, you're like, okay, I know what's going on, and I know how to transcend that, and I know how to be free from that. And most importantly, how to be myself. Because at the end of the day, what the soul wants more than anything is just authenticity. The soul wants to be able to feel free to express itself naturally through your human form. And experiencing freedom in the human experience is all about that right there. The soul experiencing or expressing itself through the human form to the fullest, free of like any kind of worrying about judgment or worrying about what other people are thinking, like all that stuff. Like that is the ego. The ego is concerned about playing small and hiding and shrinking in order to gain approval or acceptance, which is all illusory, because I've talked about this before a lot too, but we're not really worried about what people think about us. We're worried about what we think about ourselves. And then we project that onto them, and it becomes this game of separation consciousness, which again is all the ego. But when you're living from the soul and you're embodying these elevated emotions because they're just natural expressions of your true divine nature, and from that place you're loving yourself and you're believing in yourself, you are now operating from a brand new frequency, and your energetic field is expanding and you're becoming more magnetic, more attractive. And yeah, that's just how it works. So, I mean, I can go on and on and on about what triggers can actually lead to, but this is the big question I want you to sit with for today. What if the reason these triggers that we have are so tough to navigate and so limiting is because of our perception of the triggers? It's because of our preconceived notion of the triggers. We've set it up in our minds to view these things as things that are like setbacks. And because of that, we really believe that. And in believing in that placebo effect, power of belief, that is what's causing life to go a certain way. These different situations and circumstances and relationships are reflecting that belief. They're reflecting that energy, that frequency. So what if the place to start with this whole business of transforming triggers into positive outcomes, what if it all starts with just changing your perception, viewing triggers from the start as a treasure? If you believe that every time you're triggered, it's your treasure, it's a gift from God, from the universe, it would change everything. And slowly but surely, what you would notice is that the things that used to trigger you don't even trigger you anymore. And you're learning so much, you're evolving, you're going from the different stages of consciousness and developing spiritually that, yeah, you're literally awakening to the truth of your being at such a high level that the outer world has no choice but to catch up and to now match that. So if you don't believe, like let's just say that what I'm saying is true, where triggers are just reflections of where we haven't fully accepted ourselves or where we haven't loved ourselves unconditionally. So that's the connection. That's what's actually going on. Well, then what happens once you start to experience the integration and the wholeness of your being and the unconditional love of your being, which again is the awakening and the expression of your true self? Well, all of a sudden, mirror principle, these things that used to trigger you are still happening. The different situations and events and the people, whatever, like it's still happening. But now you're seeing from a new lens. You're seeing from a new perception. You're seeing from the higher self instead of from the ego. And that's all that really changed. So what was once a mountain becomes an ant pile. But the only thing that changed or was transformed was whatever was viewing the mountain or the ant pile. See? There was this limited perspective, this small perspective, and all of a sudden it expanded, and now there's a higher perspective, a bigger, more expansive perspective. And it changes everything. It changes the game. And the amount of freedom that comes from that is incredible. So, yeah, sit with that. Ponder it, meditate on it. Like, what if it all starts with perception? What if that's what this is all about? Seeing, consciousness, belief. What if you are like way more powerful than you've been led to believe? This is direct experience. This is something you discover for yourself when you're honest with yourself, when you go within, when you start to bring light awareness into the darkness, the unconscious. And most importantly, through this whole process, you give yourself compassion and patience and kindness and acceptance along the way, because that's crucial. Anytime you're doing any kind of inner work, shadow work, whatever it is, you have to have self-compassion. Self-compassion is essential. So, yeah. Well, I think that's it for today. If you found this video helpful, informative, or insightful, please leave a thumbs up at the bottom of the screen and be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.